Self-acceptance isn't something we have to earn, and it isn't something we have to grow into later in life either. It's not something we fail to develop as children. In fact, we're not born lacking self-acceptance. We are born whole, we're born expressive, emotional, curious, and unashamed of our own existence. As children, we move freely. We cry when we're sad, we reach for what we want, we express joy, anger, excitement, and fear without questioning whether we're allowed to or not. So self-acceptance is actually our original state. So if you're trying to find self-acceptance, the better question to ask is, why can't I accept myself? And the reason for that is, what taught me not to? So as children, over time, most of us begin receiving messages directly or indirectly that some part of us is not acceptable and other parts are. Maybe you're criticized for being too emotional, or maybe too sensitive, too loud, too needy, too naughty, too quiet, too much or not enough of something. Maybe love felt conditional, and maybe approval was withdrawn when you expressed certain feelings or traits. So sometimes rejection, ridicule, or disapproval taught us that being fully ourselves wasn't safe. So to avoid further pain, we learned something very important. We learned to reject ourselves before someone else does. This is how self-rejection begins. Not because we were broken, but because we were trying to survive. We were trying to gain acceptance. We pushed away the parts of us that seemed to cause conflict, disapproval, or abandonment. Shame became a tool, and self-criticism became protection for us then. And self-hate became a way to stay connected to others. And over time, this inner turning against ourselves becomes so familiar that it felt like who we are. But it's not. When self-acceptance becomes conditional, it creates an internal split within us. We only begin to accept ourselves when we're maybe productive, or when we're calm, or when we're kind, or if we're attractive or successful, or if we're emotionally controlled. And we learn to reject ourselves when we do other things, like when we're maybe angry, when we're afraid, when we're maybe too needy, lonely, if we're too emotional, too ashamed, exhausted. So what happens here is that at a deep level, we learn that some parts of us are unworthy of existing. And rejecting those parts of ourselves tries to get rid of them, but it actually doesn't make them disappear. It only forces them deeper within. And what's pushed away doesn't really dissolve. It usually resurfaces through anxiety, depression, self-sabotage, resentment, hate, or emotional numbness. And this is how we can become disconnected from our true self, the part of us that was never divided to begin with. Every human being contains the full range of human qualities. All of us do. There's no trait that is inherently wrong. A quality that helps you in one situation may hurt you in another. A strength and a weakness are just often two expressions of the same energy, just two sides of it. So, for example, sensitivity can mean deep empathy or emotionally overwhelmed. Confidence can mean leadership or arrogance. Independence can mean self-trusting or maybe emotional isolation. The problem is never the quality itself. The problem is the rejection of the quality within us. When we label parts of ourselves as bad or unacceptable, we lose access to the wisdom of that quality, and then we lose balance. And self-acceptance restores wholeness by allowing everything within us to exist without condemnation. Self-acceptance doesn't mean having to give up or stay stuck or avoid growth or excusing harmful behaviors. What it really means is we just stop fighting ourselves, and we actually allow those behaviors to exist when they best serve us. So true change doesn't come from punishment, it comes from understanding them. The true self doesn't attack, shame, or control. It observes, it allows, it understands, and it chooses when it serves us to use it. Because when resistance softens, growth happens naturally without force. So self-acceptance often begins with awareness. So maybe what you could do is start to notice, where do you judge yourself? Where do you feel really harsh or unforgiving? What parts of you do you try to hide, fix, or erase? And where do you judge others even? These moments aren't failures, they're invitations. They're invitations to return to your true self, return to your self-accepting state. So instead of asking what's wrong with me, try asking what am I not allowing to exist, and how does it actually help me sometimes? Thinking in a different way doesn't have to deny reality, it just removes unnecessary cruelty. And it allows you to see that you're okay to be a human, and a flawed human too at times. So like many people might reject what they call selfishness as an example, but let's explore it a little bit more. Selfishness can represent the awareness of our needs, protection from energy, ability to set boundaries. Now, without it, people often overgive or say yes when they mean no and lose connection with themselves. But the opposite of selfishness is giving. So giving, on the other hand, allows connection, care, generosity, contribution. But without the balance of selfishness, giving itself becomes self-abandonment. We lose our needs. Both qualities are necessary for balance. Problems arise not because one exists, but because one is rejected and the other is overused. So self-acceptance allows both to exist and lets the true self choose what's appropriate in each moment. So I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment, and I want you to take 3 slow breaths and bring to mind a part of yourself that you often reject. And ask yourself, how would my true self see this part of me? What if this part was never wrong, only misunderstood? And notice when it helps you. And as you do that, notice yourself softening and having a bit of relief about it. Allow self-acceptance to grow gradually about this, one lighter thought at a time about how you look at yourself. And the more you allow your wholeness, the more you return to who you've always been, and the more connected you are to your true self.